Hello, and a very warm welcome to this pre-recorded keynote session of Digital Infra India 2021, Empowering a Digital India, Partnering for Success, brought to you by Adani Connects. If you have any questions for the panelists, they will do their best to respond when the session is live on the platform at 1 p.m. IST on Tuesday, the 9th of March, or you can reach them directly in the sponsors and exhibition area of the event platform. Before kicking off the discussion, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Digital Infra India sponsors, without whom this event would not be possible. I am now delighted to introduce our speakers, Jia Kumar Janakaraj, CEO of Adani Connects, Randy Brookman, CEO of Edge Connects, and Tony Gaunt, VP of Co-Location and Hyperscale in Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, and India at Vertiv. And now I'll hand over to our moderator for this session, Dan Thompson, Research Director at 451 Research.
Thank you so much for that intro. Before we get started, perhaps we could take those intros just a little bit further and go around the room. Gentlemen, if you don't mind, introduce yourself, what it is that you do, and then we'll continue on with our conversation here. JJ, how about I start with you, sir?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Jaya Kumar Janakaraj. Everybody refers me to as JJ. I'm the CEO for Adani Connects now. And before taking over the role for heading this new exciting joint venture at Adani Connects, I was with Adani for 7 odd years in Australia and holding their global portfolio in Singapore. And my background, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I've built large infrastructure projects, built new businesses for various mining and large infrastructure clients like Vedanta. And I've also worked in Africa, in Zambia. So I worked in India for large infrastructure projects, worked in Africa, worked in Australia, then worked in Singapore. And now I'm based in Singapore and very excited to start this new JV. And I'm sure this will be a very productive next few years for us. Thank you.
Randy.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you. I'm Randy Brockman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Edge Connects. And as pertinent in this conversation, the proud 50% partner in Adani Connects. A little bit about Edge Connects for those of you that don't know us. We now have nearly 50 data centers in 35, 36 markets around the globe. We started in the edge, and the business continued to grow together with our customers, and now have what we call really hyper-local to hyperscale set of data center products that we deploy where customers need them, when they need them, and just kind of very location sensitive in all aspects, whether it's core cloud nodes all the way down to today's edge nodes that you see.
All right, thank you. And Tony.
Dan, thank you. JJ, Randy, thank you, and looking forward to this conversation. So Tony Gaunt, I'm the Vice President for Vertiv for what we call ASI, Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, and India. I've actually been in this industry now. I'm coming up to the 25th year in a few months. So been around a wee while. Like JJ, seems to have traveled the world, currently in Australia for the last 15 years. Used to be originally headquartered out of the UK, original background as an electrical engineer. Started as an apprentice. But obviously as Vertiv, we're the critical infrastructure providers supporting the data center industry around the world, especially in India. Very, very interested, very excited by the Adani Connects partnership, and looking forward to this conversation, gentlemen. Thank you.
All right, great. And again, I am Dan Thompson, Research Director at 451 Research for the Data Center Services and Infrastructure team. One of the things that we do is track markets around the globe. And India, of course, is one of those markets. It's a market that I cover. And I have to say, gentlemen, of the markets that I cover, if by no other metric than just the number of questions I get asked, India and China have to be the hottest markets going. And interestingly, both markets are growing at the same percentage rate, compound annual growth rate of 23%, which is just very impressive. Just for a matter of conversation, the global average is around 7%. So India is carrying a much larger percentage even than we're seeing in the global marketplace. Obviously, China, when we're talking about it, it's a different scale, right, than we're talking about in India so far. But perhaps that changes in the future. So to date, much of that growth has been spurred on by the hyperscalers, of course. And we've seen them grow out primarily starting in Mumbai. And so what we're seeing now, though, after a bit of growth there in Mumbai, is that the providers are now starting to spread out across the country. So the cloud providers may have chosen Chennai, maybe the NCR, elsewhere around the country. And that growth, I believe, is going to be interesting and continue for quite some time. Not only are the cloud providers driving growth, but then there's also a number of other initiatives, such as government initiatives, which are kind of fueling this growth. Digital India is one example of this, and we're seeing that drive business as well. As I mentioned, the cloud providers are spreading out as well, and kind of coinciding with that, we see cloud computing continuing to grow throughout India. Which is only going to, kind of kick on and continue on this growth that we see in the data center industry. All of this, of course, very good news for the data center industry in India, and I think for the panelists here as well. So with that, let me stop sharing my slide and look back to you guys. We'll go back to faces here for the questions. Gentlemen, let's start with the first question. You guys have obviously formed a joint venture that is interesting in different parts of the world, and particularly in India. So let's just start there. What do we see as the impact of the global partnerships in India? And how does a partnership between a US company and an Indian company bring value to the customers in India? What's your thoughts? Randy, how about we start with you, sir?
Yeah, great. Happy to start off. So, well, we think it's going to bring a lot of value is the short answer to your question, but I think we got to prove that. But I think if we think about what the parties are bringing to the table, I hope we can fill in some of the blanks. So EdgeConneX, as I mentioned, 50 data centers, 35 some markets, actually serving across Europe, United States, South America, and today actually well over half, nearly 65% of our revenues are non-US. So you kind of think of it, we were a bit global. But you notice I didn't say much about Asia in that discussion, and certainly not India. And we, for some time, have had customers asking us to look to go there. And probably 3-4 years ago, when we first looked at it, we just didn't think we could boil the ocean. We wanted to focus in on what we were doing. We never wanted to miss a single delivery, never stumble, because it's kind of the end of the game if you do that. And when we finally had the opportunity to start to look at how best to enter Asia and which markets to go into, India bubbled up right to the top, right? That your chart is correct, and it might even be understated as we look at a market like that. And so, look, I think what we do well is we know how to do hyper edge data centers all the way up to big hyperscale types of data centers. We've demonstrated we could do it on a global scale. We live and breathe by putting our customers first and in the center of everything we do. And our customers expect a lot from us, but when we looked at how hard it is to execute and how best to do that, we felt like the best thing we could do is find the right partner. And Adani, I think it was obvious to us that was the right partner. You're talking about a company that is clearly understands all the local nuances of operating in a market. They're nation builders. Let's not kid ourselves. And this is a company that's committed to India in so many ways. They definitely have a land portfolio that is spectacular and always growing. And there is no bigger name in renewable power than Adani, right? They're the largest in India, and I think they might even be the largest solar provider in the world as well. So you take those elements, and I think you combine them with what we've been able to do at EdgeConneX in terms of edge data centers all the way up to hyperscale, really become a go-to provider. We think for a lot of these implementations, content and cloud, and now special purpose clouds. We're tech-centric, so we bring a lot of technology to the solution and the equation from an operational standpoint. And I think, and we're not arrogant enough to believe we can do it ourselves. And so we knew we needed someone like Adani to really be able to bring the best of the two together. And we'd started the dance a long time ago, and I think had the opportunity to revisit it at the very end of last year, and culturally the two companies really blended well, and hopefully the rest will be history. I'll stop there and not and stop talking about my partners so nicely.
Well, thanks for that, Randy. And so I have to say, JJ, when I look at the partnerships that happen, and this is a very common thing throughout Asia Pacific specifically, but the benefit to an EdgeConneX is clear, I think. What's the benefit to Adani? Let's hear it from that perspective, sir.
No, thanks, Dan, and thanks, Randy, for that lovely introduction of Adani Connects to the world. And this being the first event after our great announcement, I think it sort of sets the platform for us to put in perspective where the relationship is bound to go, right? So Dan, I think the first thing that we realized is that, to create a truly enabled digital India, we need technology, okay? And technology combined with the entrepreneurial spirit to grow as India needs. India has always been having big visions. Execution in India is key as well. So the two main ingredients for this partnership is technology and core competence, which comes from EdgeConneX. And then the true entrepreneurial spirit of both companies, and the execution capability and delivery in whatever we promise from Adani. And I think that whole combination is exactly what India wants. And then again, it has to have the willingness of the two entrepreneurs as well to do a true joint venture of 50-50 nature. And while I'm sure you've seen multiple deals across the world, it's very hard to see true 50-50 joint ventures, which is in paper, and in spirit, it's a 100-100 joint venture. Like Ed put it in the signing ceremony that we had in India. It is absolutely a marriage of two hearts looking into the right direction and with a passion to deliver what the nation needs, not what just the company needs, what the nation needs. And therefore, it's a long-term approach with sustainability in the backbone, but then a very hard-nosed approach to deliver what is there in front of us. Therefore, it brought, I would say, the best of both the companies together in terms of timeline, in terms of minds. And we can see partnership as well, because it is not something that we think at Adani Connects that it's just Adani and EdgeConneX and we can boil the ocean in India. It's not that. We will look forward for strategic partnerships, whether it is Vertiv or whether it is other companies who are based in India. And India needs all of it. There is no one way in India. India needs all of the above. And how we put together in practice is the most important thing. And the other aspect is that we obviously harness the great strengths that Adani brings on the table, which will be available to Adani Connects to leverage, whether it is the land bank, whether it is the infrastructure, whether it is the electricity, whether it is the renewable power, and therefore give to our customers what they need and beyond, and not just thinking about their current program and bringing it big. It's about building what they need for the future, because 1.2 billion people and growing, okay, and that's not stopping, okay, there's no control on that. And then young people, okay, 800 million people plus, less than the age of 30, leapfrogging using technology, and therefore don't have any baggage. And as you know, Dan, in India, we don't have a social net as well. So we need to fight to survive. Right from the time we are born, we need to cry for the milk, okay, otherwise we are not getting it. So the same fighting spirit is needed in terms of enabling that population to grow as well in the business aspects. So I think this partnership in that way, the technology and the infrastructure is getting sort of combined. But the most important thing, as we all talked about, is how do we put the flesh and blood around it, is in terms of the talent development, the people aspects, the softer things, and then ensuring that we derive great value for the nation and superior value for the shareholders.
Tony, your thoughts on the topic, sir?
I think that's some very insightful commentary from both Randy and from JJ there. And when I look at this and listen to the passion and the intent that both gentlemen are presenting there, you can see that knowledge, the engagement with the country and the desire to succeed. You know, at the end of the day, the digital infrastructure, the data center is now what we would call a utility. It's normal. It sits there with telecoms, gas, water, and power. So to understand this and then think about the expertise both parties are bringing. You've got the local and global knowledge of Adani. You have the data center global knowledge of EdgeConneX. And the ability to combine both of those in terms of the best practices that both can bring to the table to deliver that vision of the connected country, you know, digital India, all of the citizens connected, have access immediate, but also combining that with both organizations, well, with Adani Connex's ability to adapt and flex. As JJ says, 5 years, 10 years down the line here. We're not talking about something, I don't believe when I'm listening to the two gentlemen, that this is something that's a 1 year shot. This is an intent with a great opportunity to impact society for the long term. So I think there's a very, very strong impact here in terms of bringing this global partnership into India. It's going to be a very exciting time to watch and see how this delivers and pans out. So I'm looking forward to seeing this.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, Tony. I mean, I can think of no two better paired companies than a power company and a data center company, because the two go hand in hand, right? Like data centers don't exist without power. Power companies love data centers, frankly, because it's a nice, steady, even demand on the grid. And so, you know, to that extent, I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful marriage from a technology and a company type perspective. Moving on to the next question. Randy, you've been quick to point out that EdgeConneX does both hyperscale campuses and what you term as hyperlocal edge data centers. So we've kind of talked about in the setup, up to this point, India has been primarily driven by, or the growth there has been primarily driven by hyperscale, and I believe that's what we are seeing, you know, still presently. But let's talk about 5-10 years down the road. Where do you see India going? What type of, you know, are you thinking hyperscale or are you thinking hyperlocal and edge? What are your thoughts, sir?
Right. Well, so I'd probably say a person with a lot more insights on where India is going is Adani Connect than EdgeConneX. That's the reason for the partnership. But I've listened to my partners, and I think the answer is a little bit of yes, and for the following reasons. First of all, I think there's going to be tremendous growth in the hyperscale side. That is inevitable and I think unstoppable, right? Whether it's the big hyperscale players that everybody talks about, that, you know, some of the US headquartered ones, there's European based ones, there's Chinese based ones. Let's not forget, India itself has some interesting cloud platforms and specialized cloud platforms as well that are being developed and rolled out across there. But when it comes to hyperscale or edge, I actually think it's both. And I think both are going to grow. When, you know, JJ said it at the beginning, 1.2 billion people and growing. We think about the use cases on the edge, and, you know, the first use case we experienced was getting content closer to the consumer. Now, it may be a different type of pipe, and I'm sure JJ can elaborate on that, but there's an insatiable appetite for content. Move fast forward a little bit, and now it's not just the consumption of content, but the creation of content driving an even further need for the edge. And at least what we saw first in the United States and then elsewhere in the world is no sooner did we kind of get content closer to the consumer when the cloud needed to get closer to the enterprise.
Yeah.
And there are enterprises in a lot more than 5, 6, 7 hyperscale markets of India, right? When you look across the whole geography there. So I think you're going to see that same sort of tiering, the big tier 1 core cloud availability zones. Then I think you'll start to see big regional nodes roll out inside India, and then possibly, hyperlocal or metro edge type things, whether it's content or special purpose clouds that'll drive it or smaller instances of the public clouds. I can't say. I'm guessing they're going to see a continued explosion of content just from my early observations in the marketplace. That'll drive some of that edge, but not far behind it's going to be cloud coming to the edge as well. That's one person's view, but that's an informed view from folks like Tony. And Vertiv's a huge and close partner of EdgeConneX, so we listen to them, and of course JJ and his team explaining the market.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. If you plot out the populations of India, obviously you have these massive population centers, right, in these cities, but then there's also a good number of just dispersed populations across the country, the subcontinent as well. And I say subcontinent intentionally because there's neighboring countries which are much smaller but have the potential to be serviced from India, right? So it seems to me there's lots of opportunity here for sort of a mix. That's my take though. JJ, what would you say, sir?
Yeah, no, thanks Dan for that. And I think I'll just add on a couple of points there. See, the first and the foremost thing, like we said, is that the population is big and it is obviously concentrated in the metros, but we should also not forget that is a very relative term. But when we look at it from the total mass or the population point of view, 5 million population in India in a sort of a district or a tier 4 town, okay, is much bigger than a tier 1 town in Australia, say Sydney.
Right.
So I think we must put all these things always in perspective, because when we try to say small in India in terms of the volume and the market that's available for us to play over the next 10, 15, 20 years, when we are doing an infrastructure build, is something that is extremely exciting. Having said that, the other important point, Dan, is that data is the only commodity consumption in India in the rural areas is faster and higher than the urban areas in terms of intake. Okay, not many commodities, or I don't think any other commodity is consumed in that pattern. It is obviously because the leapfrogging of technology and internet availability to rural class, the availability of smartphones, very enabling tools by the government in terms of digital payment platforms, directly giving certain subsidies to people in their bank accounts, in the digital way, and ensuring that people are coming into that overall, net of the government's support system through digital enablement. So all this is also playing a big role. So therefore, the way we'll have to see India in the future is very different from the way players have seen India in the past, because we are completely talking chalk and cheese. Okay, what we are talking going forward is a foundation that is there. Okay, there is a dream and there's a vision, and there is a business that needs to connect this dream and vision to this foundation that is there on the ground right now. Okay, so it is very important for business not to just take off and fly just on the dream, but has to stay on the foundation. And that is where this large hyperscalers and this large demand that is coming from the various cloud players and the multinationals coming into India in terms of data storage and processing is one side. The other side, there is a very big policy play that is coming in terms of data privacy, the way the customers want to understand where their data is sitting today. Okay, and that ability for them to feel safe and secure in this ever-growing world. Okay, and then the evolving way of fintech coming up, and that playing a very, very big role, right? People were not having a bank account and were only transacting cash, and now are doing Google Pay. Okay. Right. So if you see the shift that people are going through as data center providers, I think we should not be just thinking about the brick and mortar that we are going to build, but we need to sort of have this plan on how flexible and agile we are, so that while we provide this large hyperscale data center requirements in the major cities, we have this ability to bring the technology to where it is needed so that the latency and the demands in terms of technologies are available to this tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. And therefore, that is where we'll be able to sort of plug and play with the various networks that we have in our transmission and distribution networks in Adani, and leverage on that as well in terms of to reach the unreached areas where there will be renewable power, where will be networks available, and therefore sort of leverage with the telecom companies who will be connecting into the data centers to bring that aspect as well. So I would say it's a mix of both, and it's the ability of management to think global but act local, and look at India not as just any other marketplace, but I think look at India as India. It's a very different beast, and we need to be extremely local to deal with it. Otherwise, we'll miss the bus. And I'll just give one example, Dan, is that in 2015, when we started our renewables business, it was just 5 years back, right? We were talking like this on our renewables business 5 years back. We had nothing on the ground, okay? Today, we have close to 4,000 megawatt in operation, 5,000 megawatt coming into operation this very year, calendar year. And we are talking about 14 gigawatt going into operations and 25 gigawatt by 2025. Very clearly India's largest renewable player and the world's largest solar developer. Okay. Again, this is the delivery that is going to speak volume. So I think we need to plan for the delivery, and that is where this partnership and that is where the market is giving us this ability to do that.
Good stuff. And Tony, I know your ears perked up at those numbers that JJ just threw out. I know you'd like to protect all of those gigawatts, but tell us though your perspective on hyperscale versus local, or some meet point in the middle. What's your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think JJ made a very pertinent point there. 5 million people is pretty much larger than every city in Australia apart from Sydney. So he's absolutely spot on with that comment, that's for sure. I think for us now, we've been talking about the edge for a while. There's always been that question of how do you define the edge? What is it? What does it look like? And I think we've gone from it's 2 racks, 3 racks, 5 racks, where right now it seems to be, maybe a 1 or a 2 megawatt deployment. But the reality about the edge is we're at that inflection point, I believe, where it is what you make it, it's what you choose to make it. Society is changing, the way that every transaction, JJ's mentioned, personal financial transactions. We can even talk about, maybe, and forgive me, JJ, I don't know Adani's network structure from a power perspective, but control of, using edge deployments for control of grid connection, transferring from one station to another. The opportunities, frankly, are endless. We haven't really talked about 5G yet and the power capacities and demands 5G is going to drive, right? But as society and as citizens and business become more and more connected and drive that demand, we're going to go to that point where, to Randy's phrase of hyper-local is going to be a fundamental necessity. What that will look like in 5 years, what a data center needs to be in 5 years, 10 years is probably going to be anybody's guess. If we think back to where we were 10 years ago, it's a very, very different beast that we're now presenting ourselves with now, and the demand that we have. But, if we take your first slide, I think 23% CAGR was what you were looking at. So 5 years time, that's nearly 3 times where we are now.
That's right.
10 years time, I've not done the maths yet. I couldn't do it quick enough. That's the kind of capacities we're going to be talking about. Then we can factor in cable landing stations. We're going to need more and more fiber. We're going to need more and more connectivity around the region as well. So as India and the world becomes, I don't think we're going to be talking about country specific or city specific. We are getting to that point now where the world will be connected. But yes, think globally, think locally, but be global. That's where we will be. So I think for me, it's creating that opportunity to adapt and to flex and go where the market goes and lead the market in terms of what it actually needs. There are a lot of ideas that don't need to be rethought. You can start from scratch. From a design, from an operation perspective, from a technology perspective. So it's going to be interesting again. I said this earlier, it's going to be interesting to watch and hopefully be part of. I've seen this around the rest of the region here in Asia, and the organizations, the countries that do carry that ability to move, to change, are the companies and countries that will succeed. That's for sure.
Yeah, interesting. The math comment, something that's kind of interesting to note is just Mumbai. If everything comes online this year that was supposed to, and JJ sort of alluded to this, that may or may not happen, especially considering with the challenges of 2020 kind of still rolling into 2021. In any case, Mumbai will have more than doubled in size since 2019. In terms of operational square feet. So just incredible growth and impressive growth. But I want to circle back to something, JJ, you were kind of talking about this already. So if it's okay, let me start with you. You were sort of talking about fintech and, embedded in that are some of the mobile payment ideas that you were kind of tossing around just a moment ago. So I want to just, if we can, just kind of double click on this and talk about what are these next frontiers for growth, whether it be in cloud customers or just how you see the data center working out. What are these sort of next frontiers that you see for India?
Yeah, so I think Dan, that's a very good question. And as you see, cloud adoption in India is at a very nascent stage. If you look at numbers, is at around 12 to 15%. I think what I hear from industry colleagues is that in China is at around 30 to 40%, along with Brazil. US is at around 60%. Okay, so India is going to obviously have that sort of a spurt in cloud adoption. But while that's happening, there is always also a sort of a hybrid cloud mechanism that is coming into play as well, where people are wanting data centers to be connected and therefore give that ability for people to have a hybrid solution. So India, for a want of a better way to describe, is going to give everything on the platter as an available marketplace. I think it is absolutely a technology driven game where it will be for the customer to choose what is best for him at that point of time. One thing that I've seen of Indian customers is that they are extremely fast adapters. They're not the best innovators, but extremely fast adapters. And the scale and the marketplace provides that game plan for them to leapfrog again, for a want of a better term, and then jump to the best solution that is available. So the challenge for us as data center providers is for us to also be that nimble and not put our feet into a certain area where it is too difficult for us to pick up and run. So that is also very important for us, and not to just sort of think short term and think that, okay, this is the best thing to do today, and I'm going to build all this stuff, right? And I'm going to have so much of volume. And therefore we need to be nimble, and we need to be very much having our ears on the ground, and then also conditioning the industry where it should go. So it is not alone our job to just sit and do what the customer wants, but we also need to shape the customer's demand in the way where the world is going. And again, I would like to draw parallels with the way we have built infrastructure for India, whether it is in the port sector, whether it is in the energy sector. Okay, all we have done always is that we have brought in global best practices, global benchmarks into India, and therefore shaped India's demand to go into that mode. So I think as Adani Connects, we have that great role to play as well, whether it is in terms of cloud adoption, whether it is in terms of early mover advantage in bringing the best in class technology. Our job is also to sort of enhance customer knowledge and then bring them the best experience that they need, because a lot of people are looking for one-stop shop. Okay, so whether it is an enterprise customer looking to go into cloud, or whether it is a large fintech business wanting to sort of have a hybrid model, be it for their regular data center or for their DR space. And there's a lot of adoption on availability zones happening as well. So how do we want to play all that into a matrix which gives the future proofing for their business needs? And I think that is where we need to play. We need to put ourselves into the customer shoes and also bring in the world knowledge that India needs, and not just sort of give a cookie cutter approach of trying to make this a real estate business. I think that's the pitfall we do not want to fall, right? We do not want to sort of oversimplify the business and thinking that every real estate player is a data center provider, right? And that's to sort of, Dan, come back to maybe answering the first question, why this partnership, right? This is beyond real estate, because I sometimes don't want to get carried away, but what I hear in the market, that this is just real estate play. I don't think this is a real estate play. There's a big technology play here, and we need to therefore sort of adapt to that superior thinking as well, in the way the customers are thinking and in the way the world is moving around.
No, I love that. No, and I could not agree more. If we dumb it down to real estate, no offense to our friends in real estate, it's just a different game, right? And I love your comments around the nimbleness of the business. I think that's wonderful commentary, because sometimes you need to build a big box. Sometimes what you need is a small box. And I believe what we've talked about here so far, is that EdgeConneX has the ability to do both, which I think is a wonderful aspect of this partnership. So Randy, over to you, sir. Next frontiers for growth that you're seeing. If you want to limit it to India, great. If you want to talk about just broader, feel free.
Well, I think here's the good news. I think what I say on the broad case, I think probably applies to India and then some again, right? That's the interesting thing there. So look, I'll I can build on what JJ was talking about. There are some verticals that are obvious, and if I think about India in particular, starting at 10 to 12% cloud penetration, you're going to see all these vertical enterprises, nearly all of them, migrate over. But I think some of the other things we're seeing. I don't need to explain how great Azure is doing, or AWS, or Google Cloud. I think in Oracle Cloud, I think they're all got a pretty good story and a good machine talking about how great they're doing. But I do think that it goes beyond that. I mean, I'm seeing some other really interesting things that maybe you say is the cloud's enabling, or that's even driving the cloud further. So we've talked a little bit about mobile in India, right? It is the primary on-ramp and off-ramp, and there's some interesting things happening on that front. As we look at the next generations of technologies there, just look how much that content gets consumed, and not only consumed in that environment, but also created. So I think you're going to see tremendous amounts of growth in India, driven by mobile and driven by content. India and beyond, the Internet of Things is taking shape, right? Long way to go. Sometimes the slideware out hypes the actual curve, and maybe it's ultimately localized. But look, it's starting to really take shape. There's things happening in the Internet of Everything that we don't even pay attention to, right? So I think you're going to see growth in IoT. Clearly, machine learning, special purpose clouds like gaming clouds or AI-based clouds are absolutely making their way in. And then I'll bring it back to India. Talk about an economy that's just beginning to burgeon in e-commerce and so on, right? So, depending where you're at in the world, you take it for granted, but this is a burgeoning economy. And as JJ pointed out, and they've enabled it with some interesting payment mechanisms to begin with, right? The rest of us applied antiquated mechanisms to an e-commerce. They're actually, I think in India, you're seeing it's starting in a more advanced stage in some ways. So it has the opportunity to grow even faster than we've seen in a lot of other places in the world. So I think those are some of the other areas we're going to see growth beyond just your traditional public clouds. And it wouldn't shock me at the end of the day in India if you don't see hybrid cloud being the biggest implementation, actually.
Yeah, it's sort of, you make a wonderful comment. Actually, it's an interesting dynamic to watch emerging markets, places like the United States and Europe, who sort of have this, and JJ, I believe you even used this word earlier, that sort of have a baggage of technology that we've brought along with us. Emerging markets like India have the opportunity to sort of leapfrog in technology and take advantage of things that we're just starting to think about here in the United States, but are ever the more useful in rural areas of India or wherever. So I think it's a interesting comment there. Tony, you bring a slightly different view to this whole question of next frontiers, being from Vertiv, a very hardware-centric and technology-centric side of the business. Tell us, what are your thoughts on sort of the next frontiers for growth in India?
That's a really good question, especially when Randy and JJ have probably covered about 80% of it already. This is what happens when you go last. But in all seriousness, machine learning is definitely one, and that ability, as we've already talked about, to leapfrog technology, as we've seen in other countries where telecoms has gone not from copper, but they've gone straight to 4G. So again, back to the impact session, there's the ability to learn and to adapt and play really quickly. I think if we think of India, it's that connectivity for the citizens. You know, the intention of the country to provide a complete connectivity for its citizens around the regions, around all the domestic areas, around the rural areas as well as the city areas, means that where do people want to go? Is it gaming? Is it AI? Is it machine learning? What about the health system? Right, connected health records, connected data for people as they travel, connected education. We've seen this in a lot of countries with education now, with what's been going on around the world in the past year, where people are working from home, studying from home. They need that ability and capacity to be able to not necessarily go to a particular point of location for work. So I think they're the frontiers we're going to see from a social aspect, from a design aspect, and the renewable energy aspect, as JJ was talking. You know, that's going to be the next frontier. How do we actually truly use renewable in a data center? Maybe, you know, not just credits, but actually using renewable energy at the data center itself. And forgive me, JJ, can you just remind me, what was the number of gigawatts you've got coming online?
This year is 5 gigawatts coming online.
5 gigawatts coming online this year. You know, that is phenomenal, coming online as a renewable energy. And let's not forget, again, when we talk about data center design and the technology implemented there, we're already running these things typically very, very efficiently and very effectively. So the power consumption that we draw, especially from a renewable base, has a really strong opportunity to be very, very net neutral in terms of emissions and consumption. So I think I'm trying to put a different turn on this than just talking about the market sector, so that we don't have all of us saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. So from a technology and an engineering point of view within the data center, I think that's very specific. And I think I'd also touch on JJ's comment about talent as well. You know, as this industry and sector continues to enhance around the Indian markets, we're not just talking about creation of expertise and training for design and construction. We're not just talking about operation, but we're opening doors for people as AI, as machine learning, fintech, gaming all come to play. We're actually creating that social commitment and provision for talent development, maybe not in our industry, but as a user of our industry. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a lot to be given here in the next few years from this sector.
No, interesting comment, actually.
Different perspective there, Dan.
Yeah, no, that was great. It was a really good and interesting commentary, I believe. And actually, you know, you brought up the sustainability. So gentlemen, if you don't mind, I'm going to take some artistic license and hop around a bit here and just go straight to the social responsibility and sustainability. I think it's no secret data centers are heavy users of power. And in countries who or where power is generated by coal or other unsustainable means, that inherently means data centers are huge contributors to carbon footprints. And so in India, we have an opportunity, right? We have an opportunity to do things differently. And so, JJ, perhaps let me just start with you, if it's okay. How do you see, so if we're making a national platform for data centers in India, what do you see as the impact on social responsibility and sustainability? And how is Adani Connects going to participate in that and influence that?
No, that's a very important aspect. I think that's the fourth dimension in this whole business model, and that's going to be the most important dimension that is going to sustain this business for future. So I think it's very important for all companies, and of course, including Adani Connects, to have our right policies and procedures in terms of sustainability and ESG for that matter. But I think I'll flip the coin the other side. It's one thing to have a policy. The other thing is to actually have a business model which supports the climate action. Okay, so Adani's business model is climate action. Okay, Adani's business model is growth with goodness. So Adani Connects is actually pivoting on that absolute model of business, not on some myth that we need to have a very nice paper and we have to have a very good, what do you call, pep talk on climate change. Okay. So the actual implementation, like what I said, of including ongoing projects of 14 gigawatt on renewable energy, is a testament on what is the foundation that this company as Adani Connects is having to leverage, not alone for domestic consumption, but also for data consumption. Like we all grew in a time in business when we said that be environmental friendly, don't print a paper, right? So I think we are coming into an age where we'll have to see that don't send an email, you are actually consuming more energy. Okay. So how conscious decisions now people are taking is unbelievable, and really sort of hats off to the people who have driven this into the minds and thinking of the new age generation as well. So I think renewable energy, and therefore sustainable renewable energy, like you said, it's not just creating offsets. So for our customers, what we are able to give is, we are able to give large percentage of renewable energy because of the hybrid platforms on wind and solar that we will be able to tap into. And since we are spread across India in our renewable energy network, and we also have the various aspects in India through the regulatory frameworks to have group captive models. So Adani Connects will also be able to deliver group captive models, which will enhance shareholder value, because there are certain incentives available in the regulatory framework. So that allows Adani Connects to have equity into power investments as well. So it's a very different dimension that we bring on the table. So as Adani Connects will not alone be a data center provider, and wherever there is volume and there is scale, and which we believe will be there in most of the cities that we are going to play in, Adani Connects will also be an energy supplier in terms of the energy solution to the customer. And therefore, it is a direct contribution into the sustainability of the business model, because we are going to see revenue from it, we are going to see shareholder benefit from it, but we are also going to be playing a very responsible position in the sustainability aspect. The other dimension apart from that is also the communities of interest, right? Whether we are going to be in Chennai, whether we are going to be in Mumbai, whether we are going to be in Noida, or maybe even in Vizag, where we are looking at Vizag becoming the Virginia of India in terms of data center play. What we're also looking at is the social responsibility that comes along with it, because as you all know, in India, it's not just for the government to do everything that is socially needed. So we need to create clean water access, clean energy access, good school education access to kids, and therefore prepare the society that we are not islands of excellence that we are creating, but we are creating a platform for excellence for people to participate in the wider community as well. So that communities of interest who live around us, who breathe around us, are also feeling that there is a social goodness that is coming with the growth that we are bringing on the table. So that it's very, very important for us as management team to stay connected to the ground, stay connected to the people in the community, because it is very easy for us to just sit in a box in a boardroom and think that everything is great. So I think it is very important for us to see, and I'll just take an example, like treatment of water. Okay, and as you know, water is a big issue in India, and water scarcity and the improvement of water consumption is extremely important. So how is this team going to play a role, say, in sewerage treatment of maybe the nearby communities, and reuse that water in the chillers and the chiller platforms that we are going to have in our business model, and also supply some surplus water to the society. So therefore, not alone reuse the water and therefore be net consumption negative, but also supply water to the nearby community through the facilities that we can create in platforms in most of the cities that we will operate. Because as you all know, in India, collection and treatment of sewerage is just, what do you call, negligible percentage, and we can play a big role in that whole thing. So it's a big dimension that we can play in. But I think, again, it is picking and choosing the right ones for the right place and what actually the community needs, and not just go and roll out what you think is the best to do.
Oh, I love that, man. And I want to hear more about this once we have it in practice. It's a great story, and one that I would love to tell. So do keep me in mind. Randy, what are your comments here? What are your thoughts, sir?
Wait, wow. You always hate to go after that. Right? Holy smokes. If if you don't think this isn't at the core of the DNA of why we're doing this, like, I don't know what else to say, folks. If you listen to JJ there, look, the growth with goodness. I mean, that what a great phrase that Adani lives and breathes by, and it's why we did the partnership, guys. Let's not kid ourselves, right? Today, we're fortunate that together with our customers, we are carbon neutral in our power consumption. In fact, a little bit better than that, and it's renewable power, right? That if we can't do it direct, which is what JJ's talking about being able to do, literally captive power arrangements that can do this direct, which is hard to do in many situations. You end up buying green RECs or various other types of mechanisms, but we're there today, right? Today, take care of your customers, take care of people, and take care of the planet. But when we went into this with JJ, and obviously the right choice to lead Adani Connects, and the commitment to ESG and sustainability, not just in power, it was clear that what Adani can do is really give us the opportunity to, in a market like India, to make available renewable power solutions to our customers, whether they're taking advantage of India's largest renewable power supplier, the world's largest solar provider, or quite frankly, some of these interesting captive power opportunities that JJ's raised. I think it sums up with, right, we're going to do the right thing by our customers, and it's right for our customers, it's right for India, and quite frankly, it's right for the planet. And we're thinking about this holistically, the sustainability challenge holistically. And we're starting with, quite frankly, an unfair competitive advantage given the partnership we put in place, right? Our belief system, Adani's belief system, and Adani's scale at not only infrastructure, but in this case, the power infrastructure, renewable power infrastructure. So I don't know how to follow what JJ said, so I think I just said it in 3 or 4 different ways, but I'll hand it over to Tony. Good luck, Tony.
Thank you,
Tony, you have a again, an opportunity for a slightly different perspective from Vertiv. How are you guys thinking about social responsibility and sustainability in India?
It's a subject that across the world is paramount to us as an organization, whether we take that as an employer, a responsible employer, obviously, and safety is paramount as well, clearly. Whenever we talk safety, it doesn't matter who in the organization, safety is absolutely number one. Everybody should go home to their families on an evening, absolutely a given statement. So there is always that level of responsibility you have as an organization. It doesn't matter where you are in the world and what your role is. Okay, we all have that obligation. But don't say but, that sounds demeaning. When we then think about the social responsibility, we spend a lot of our time with our customers, with our partners around the world, looking at the designs of their infrastructure. Okay, how can we impact energy efficiency, energy consumption? To JJ's point, do you need to use water at all? We can talk about reusing it and recycling it and returning it to society, but actually, what if you don't need to use water? What if during heavy power consumption periods, you can actually grid connect all those batteries you've got sitting on your UPSs and either feed back to grid or feed your own facility? Okay, so from an engineering perspective within the data center, there's some of the areas that we look at and talk about. I think from where are we as an industry? Best estimates are we're about 1% of global consumption of energy. So we do have an obligation to the world, to the planet, to our children and grandchildren, multiple generations thereafter, to ensure that we actually protect the planet and use the energy as wisely as we possibly can. And it's always an interesting question when people say, well, how energy efficient is a data center? And we think about it from a pure consumption perspective. But, and this is a little bit pie in the sky now, but what if we could actually take that and say, what's the derived value of that consumption? If we are training communities, if we are delivering people new careers, new opportunities, not just in one country, but around the world, how do we actually quantify that in terms of pure energy consumption? So from a social responsibility perspective, you can actually flip the typical measures and look at this from a pure value of what we're delivering to an individual, to a family, to a city, to an economy, to a country. And I think they're some of the bigger picture ideas that we could actually take here, as well as the designs.
Yeah, man, wonderful comments. Sorry, go ahead. I was just saying, wonderful comments, but continue. Yeah, sorry.
No, I don't know where to carry on, to be honest with you, because I think Randy's right. Try and follow JJ's initial comment.
I don't know. Don't discredit yourself. That was wonderful, man. And I love hearing these engineering ideas, because it seems, the data center industry can be slow to innovate at times. I mean, and frankly, rightly so, right? I mean, these are the underpinnings of many technologies, and so we want it to be reliable, and oftentimes innovation means failure, because that's how you innovate, right? You have to learn through failing. But in any case, it's great hearing a company such as Vertiv talking about these engineering ideas. What could we do? How could we participate? So that's wonderful. Gentlemen, with an eye towards time, what I would like to do is just round out with one final question here. Perhaps, JJ, perhaps you'd be the best person to answer this, and then we can kind of just have some quick closing remarks. But in practice, how is this partnership going to work? When we talk about India, you can't talk about India without talking about connectivity. You can't talk about EdgeConneX without talking about connectivity. So how is this going to work? How are you guys thinking of bringing connectivity to the consumer and to kind of help fuel the capacity for these consumers? What are your thoughts there, sir?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very important aspect, and I think there is so much that needs to be done in the connectivity space, and that is something that we need to enable as well. Like I sit in Singapore now, and then building new data centers in Singapore is just not going to be there. And more data is going to be mined in India and in the subcontinent around India. And like you said, therefore, connectivity of this region and playing a role in the connectivity of this region is extremely important. Therefore, again, what comes into play is, putting a cable and putting a cable landing station and connecting geographies is not the most important thing. It's about how's the policy play going to work around this? What are the regulatory frameworks that are going to enable the transportation of data and the storage of data for the future in a way that these regulatory zones are going to be sort of very reliable. And those are very important aspects as well, to work with the various governments of India, governments of Singapore, governments of the region. And there are various data, security and data transformation or transportation agreements being made right now. Okay, there are a lot of economic agreements being made on data. How are we going to play into all that? So that is very, very important for Adani Connects as well, because that's in our opinion the long-term strategy that is going to set the context for the various cables to flow in. Okay, the next important thing is the right of way. Okay, once you land into India, it is the right of way that is going to be the very, very important aspect in India, because everybody can lay a cable, put a cable. There are large telcos available. Telcos have a vision in India, and they are connecting India in a big way. And then it is enabling that right of way, enabling that various infrastructure to be delivered to the people. And that's where, again, Adani has an advantage and a leg up in that, because of our transmission and our distribution networks, the various OPGW cables that we have along with our transmission towers, where we are able to provide solutions to the hyperscale customers as well, who are in need of those cables and those connectivities. And especially in extremely, difficult situations in Mumbai, where we have our whole distribution network as well, right? So there is all that complementary aspects that we need to play. And obviously we need strong partners. And like what Tony was talking about, there are huge innovative industry solutions coming. And as data center providers, I think we need to continuously partner with telcos, with innovative companies that are coming in this space, and therefore give that ability for the customer to have the best experience, and not just be wanting to give the customer what you have. And that agility in Adani Connects is very important as well. So therefore, Adani Connects is a truly independent joint venture. And for me to be the CEO of that, it is one side I can play with the best in class of infrastructure from Adani, best in class of technology from EdgeConneX. But I also do have access to the world. And therefore, I can get the customers what they actually need, and not just stick to Adani and EdgeConneX and say that I don't provide anything else. No, I'm a truly sort of an independent company, and I need to give the best experience to the customer. So therefore, I can access the market for what the best the market demands or provides at that point of time as well. Dan, to your point, in terms of the infrastructure and connectivity, and give the best experience to the customer.
Very good. Randy, closing thoughts, sir.
Yeah, how's it? I think you asked a big question and tied in a little bit of connectivity in that, which is how's it going to work in practice? Adani Connect stands on its own 2 feet, right? It gets to tap into the best of Adani and the best of EdgeConneX, but by no means is limited by just tapping into the best of EdgeConneX and the best of Adani. Our largest partner is Vertiv. That's probably not a secret in the world either. And we've tried to we work closely with Vertiv on innovative solutions. Those come forward. Adani Connect itself will have some interesting new partnerships going forward. And so it really is gonna, I think in practice, going to operate that way, right? Kind of take the best of both and its extended partnership relationships and what it has, bring those together, but then probably go innovate and do some interesting things on its own. From a connectivity standpoint, which is where you started it and we took it to something bigger, just carrier neutral data centers, right? And that's really important premise to create there is carrier neutral data centers. You're bringing some of the peering excellence that we created in what we did with the original Edge, together with some of the incredible infrastructure capabilities. I think the market's more than ready for what Adani Connect has to offer. So we're excited about it. And we got JJ running it, which is couldn't be any happier than that. Tony, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah,
Thank
Tony,
you.
what's the thing about going last? You get the last word, sir.
I think we need to rethink the running order on these conversations. Look, there's some overarching comments that we've heard here. Okay, we talk about connectivity. That's an absolute given. The carrier neutrality is critical. The innovation's critical. The ability to adapt data center design, data center construction at the right levels people require, but at the right price points in terms of build cost as well, and operation cost is going to be important here. The connectivity of the utility is important. But I hear agility, I hear innovation all the way through this entire conversation, and just listening to Randy and JJ, one other thing I really hear is enthusiasm and that passion and desire to succeed at this. And that's what this industry needs. That for me is the most important part here, because they know how to do this. And I think it's going to be a phenomenal few years watching Adani Connect as they expand and succeed in this market. I think I'm probably just going to stop there and not try to say any more, frankly.
Well, it's a wonderful point to end on. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks to the audience as well. Sophia, I believe I hit the time right on the nose. So back to you, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to Tony, Dan, Randy, and last but very definitely not least, JJ, for a really fascinating discussion. And thank you again to the team at Adani Connect for their support. If you'd like to play back the session to your colleagues want to view it, it will be available for on-demand viewing throughout the event and for 30 days following the event on our virtual event platform. I look forward to seeing you in the next session, keeping pace with the accelerated adoption of hybrid cloud. Thank you.